Ladies and gentlemen, friends of Viking, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the sun-bathed island of Rhodes. Rhodes is the fourth largest island in Greece, stretching 60 miles north to south and 30 east to west, with a population of over 100,000. The island's less-known interior is stunning, lush with pine, cypress and juniper forest. The coastline of Rhodes stretches more than 150 miles and boasts some of the most beautiful sandy beaches with amazing turquoise and emerald green waters. You could spend all day here, folks, swimming in the Aegean Sea or simply enjoying a refreshing beverage in a gorgeous waterfront location. There are also more than 40 villages and little towns on the island. The most popular one is Lindos, with its celebrated ancient acropolis and a beautiful village at the foothill, featuring whitewashed houses, chapels, and numerous cafes, shops and tavernas. In the smaller villages, you will feel like a true local. You may visit several pottery workshops, one of the most traditional local crafts since ancient times. I am here with Manolis Bonis, one of the most talented young craftsmen of Rhodes. This is so impressive, folks. It's totally different to the pottery traditions I'm familiar with in Crete. Sometimes the coolest things happen when you least expect it. I found the ladies of Koskinu preparing melekouni, the traditional local dessert, for the big festivities that are taking place in a couple of days. Something tells me they will put me to work. A basic ingredient of melekouni is the delicious local honey. If you're a true honey lover, a visit to the only honey museum in Greece, not far from the city of Rhodes, is definitely worth your time. And since you know how much I love wine myself, especially if you have watched more of my videos, then I should not neglect to mention that Dionysus is still worshipped on the island. The absolute highlight of the island is its cosmopolitan capital, the medieval town of Rhodes, a UNESCO World Heritage Site designated in 1988 for being one of Europe's largest and best preserved inhabited medieval towns. The rest of this episode is dedicated to the history of this amazing town. The Greek word for Rhodes is Rhodos, a fragrant name with a beautiful myth behind it. According to this myth, the Greek gods drew lots to decide on patronage of all the Greek cities. The sun god, Helios, was absent during the casting of the lots, as he was busy driving his chariot up in the skies all day, and he complained to Zeus about this unfairness. Zeus asked him how he could please him, and Helios said,
"Just give me the first island that rises out from the sea."
As he spoke, there slowly emerged from beneath the sea's surface a striking island, profuse with fragrant roses, and Helios claimed it.
From that moment, the rose becomes the symbol of the island. One of the most recognizable coins in an ancient Greek market would be the Rhodian tetradrachm, a piece of silver worth 4 drachmas, having Helios on one side and on the other what else? The rose. We may not know when Helios claimed the island, but there is significant evidence it was already inhabited in the Neolithic, some 7,000 years ago.
In the Bronze Age, Minoans from Crete and later Mycenaeans from the mainland seem to have some presence here, while in the first millennium BC, Kamiros, Ialissos and Lindos are the 3 powerful Dorian Greek city-states Rhodes is divided into.
But Rhodians finally realize that only united they shall prevail. They decide they need a new capital, and that's how the city of Rhodes is founded. The next 3 centuries are the golden years of Rhodes. The island's navy rules these waters and controls every major trade route, especially the one to Ptolemy's Egypt.
By following a successful policy of neutrality in the late 4th century, when Alexander the Great's successors are consumed in endless wars against one another, Rhodes prospers as it becomes a most important commercial hub in the Eastern Mediterranean.
The year 304 BC poses a huge challenge, as the Rhodians refuse to join the Macedonian king against Ptolemy, their main business partner. So a furious Antigonus sends his son Demetrius to punish the island.
Demetrius, also known as the Besieger of Cities, uses all kinds of siege engines to take the city, from catapults and ballistas to a famous 120-foot tall siege tower called Elepolis, the destroyer of cities.
For an entire year, the offensive continues non-stop, but the Rhodians manage to defend the city successfully. So in the end, both sides agree to end this conflict. In the end, Demetrius took his Macedonians and left, leaving behind all the war material, his expensive siege engines included. The Rhodians sell them and spend all the money on a colossal monument to Helios, to honor him for saving the city.
The Colossus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was a bronze statue of Helios. He was standing proud, 100 feet tall, on a 40-foot marble pedestal, and he could be seen from miles away, an iconic monument projecting the confidence of Rhodes.
We really don't know what the Colossus looked like, but based on ancient coins and literature, many believe he was standing right here at the mouth of the ancient harbor, holding a torch in his right hand. What a sight he must have been.
Fun fact, folks, 2,000 years later, the French sculptor Frédéric Bartholdi draws inspiration from the Colossus and creates the statue of a very famous lady.
The Colossus will collapse due to an earthquake some 60 years later, and the broken pieces will simply lie on the ground for centuries. When the Rhodians consider a possible restoration, they seek Apollo's advice at the Oracle of Delphi, and they receive from Pythia a very straightforward answer: move not what lies on the ground. Centuries pass, and 1,000 years fast forward. The Arabs will become briefly the rulers of Rhodes. They melt down the broken pieces of the Colossus that are still lying on the ground and sell them to some Jewish merchant who, according to legend, needs 900 camels to transport that massive volume of scrap metal.
In the 5 centuries to follow, the island is ruled by different lords and often raided by pirates, until it eventually becomes a stepping stone for crusaders on their way to the Holy Lands.
For approximately 2 centuries, from the early 1300s to the 1500s, Rhodes is ruled by the Knights of St. John, also known as Knights Hospitaller. Historical evidence on when the order was exactly founded is rather scarce. The beginning of the story is shrouded in legend, but we do find them in Cyprus towards the end of the 13th century, when the Crusaders are pushed out of the Middle East by the Muslims.
With a rule well established in Rhodes, the Knights built a massive stronghold to protect the city, with double and triple walls, bastions and towers, with a formidable moat all around it, defended with all kinds of guns.
The Knights are an international organization with members from all over Catholic Europe. However, there is a clear division between different nationalities, expressed with the term tongue.
Every tongue was assigned a different section of the walls. It had its own leader and its own auberge in the medieval city, an inn where its members met. Walking down the ambient promenade known as the Street of Knights, you may admire the finest examples of these impressive compounds, each one carrying the tongue's coat of arms.
The order was composed of 3 different ranks: knights, chaplains, and serving brothers, which basically corresponds to the subdivision of medieval society into nobility, clergy, and commoners. Needless to say, the knights occupied all important positions. The chaplains were the priests of the order, and the serving brothers assisted the knights in war, taking care of the wounded. The supreme authority of the order was the Grand Master, a noble with unlimited powers, elected for life by the representatives of the 7 tongues. The Grand Master's palace, also known as the Castello, was the Knights' leader's residence, as well as the administration center. Designed as a massive stronghold, 250 by 250 feet, defended with cannons, and featuring a huge atrium and more than 80 large halls, this is perhaps the most impressive of all the structures in the medieval city. Don't forget, folks, the main goal of the Knights was to weaken the forces of Islam in the Eastern Mediterranean by creating bridgeheads in Asia Minor and the Middle East, and by dominating the east to west trading routes. With decisive commando attacks, the knights were taking over strategic cities in the Ottoman Empire. They were capturing enemy ships. And on top of that, they took their men as prisoners and forced them to work as rowers on their warships.
This is something that the great Sultan cannot tolerate. In June 1522, an enormous force of well over 100,000 Ottomans disembarks in Rhodes. The defenders number no more than 300 knights and a few thousand mercenaries.
This would not be the first time the Ottomans would try to make a move against Rhodes. In the year 1480, Mohammed, the conqueror of Constantinople, attempted a siege that failed greatly, and finally he was forced to withdraw. Half a century later, Sultan Selim I makes it very clear to his son Suleiman in his dying will. You shall be known as a great and powerful monarch if you manage to take Rhodes from the knights. Just make sure you are well prepared for such an endeavor.
In 1521, Suleiman decides to make his move. Grand Master at the time was Villiers de l'Isle Adam, a man who had all it took to defend Rhodes successfully. Alas, his efforts were sabotaged by his major rival for the Grand Master's title, André d'Amaral. Rumor had it that d'Amaral secretly offered his services to Suleiman, sharing sensitive information regarding weaknesses of the fortifications. The game of spies and traitors had started.
Several months before the attack, Suleiman wrote a letter to Villiers de l'Isle Adam, a plea for peace and reconciliation. The experienced Grand Master does not take the bait and takes immediate measures. The moat was deepened, the walls were repaired, supplies were organized. Knights were called back to Rhodes from all over Europe, and the island's rural interior was heavily looted, so that the enemy may source no supplies locally.
Important measures were also taken to protect the ports of Rhodes. One port was closed with a massive chain, and Mandraki, the smaller port, was blocked by large ships that were loaded with rocks and intentionally sunken by the defenders so that no enemy ship may approach. It's now June in the year 1522, and the commander of the Ottoman forces orders his artillery to fire against the walls defended by the tongue of England.
Just look at these massive things. Each one weighs approximately 600 pounds. You may think they're for catapults, but they're actually cannon bombs. In spite of this deadly fire raining on these walls and infantry attacks, wave after wave, the Ottomans achieved nothing. Counterattacks by the besieged show death and destruction, and the Ottomans are completely demoralized as they leave thousands of dead in the moat. Things look so bad that Suleiman himself is forced to arrive a month later with a huge armada and thousands of men. The deadly battle continues day and night, with fury on both sides. The Ottomans dig minas, mines, long tunnels, trying to gain entry into the city or to blow up parts of the wall. But the knights almost always manage to neutralize them. 50 engineers promise to the great Sultan they will demolish a large section of the wall. They fail to do so, and Suleiman has them impaled. Each attack cost the Ottomans thousands of men. On one day they lose 2,000, on a different offensive 3,000, and on September 24, when they launch a simultaneous attack against the positions of England, Provence, Italy and Spain, they lose 15,000 men. According to eyewitnesses, the sea was red with blood. Suleiman is so disappointed, he is ready to lift the siege and withdraw. He is prevented from doing so as he receives inside information that the defenders are exhausted and their war material depleted. One of the servants of Damaral was discovered shooting arrows with messages to the Ottomans on the other side. He was put to cruel medieval torture that made him confess that his master had made an agreement with the Ottomans that he would open one of the gates of the fortress to the enemy. They were both beheaded. Damaral was quartered, and his pieces were hanged on different sections of the walls.
In late November, attacks are still launched one after the other, and they are all repulsed by the knights. But morale on both sides has now reached a low point. Winter is coming, food is scarce, and the news from Europe for potential reinforcements are not encouraging.
Under pressure of the people of Rhodes, the knights finally agreed to a negotiation. A few days before Christmas, an embassy of Latins and Greeks present themselves to the Sultan and announce their acceptance of the peace terms. A few days before New Year's, Suleiman is the first to enter the city as a conqueror through the gate of St. Athanasius. He orders his men to close the gate once and for all, so that no other conqueror can use this gate in the future.
New Year's of 1523, at dawn, the knights embark their ships and sail for Crete. Rhodes is now, and for the next 4 centuries, under Ottoman rule.
Ladies and gentlemen, I really hope you enjoyed watching this episode. I'm sure you'll enjoy more a real walk around this ambient medieval town next time you visit on a Viking cruise. Till next time, stay safe.